Hello and welcome to the Strategic Risk Mind podcast. I'm your host, Joe Anderson, and we're really excited to have you here today. Um, we have as our guest Ben Brison, safety manager with Trinity Trailers, also a part-time consultant with Fortify Risk Management. We're really excited to have him here. Ben is an Air Force grad, so thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yep, and he has a safety background in food service, light industrial kind of stuff. Works with educating C-suite all the way down to ground floor employees, and 2 decades of experience in fire and emergency services. So it's going to be a fun conversation with Ben. And Ben, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about, your family, your background, and kind of a little bit of things you're interested in and doing on the side.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Start with the important stuff. Happily married. My wife, Melissa. We've got 4 children together. Our youngest is 11. We've got an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old in the house, so we stay pretty busy there.
Yeah, sounds like
lots of activities. Things I enjoy, fishing, hunting, lifting weights. Don't have a ton of free time, obviously, but with a couple of kids and full-time work, I do enjoy the little bit I get. So yeah, it's been fun.
That's awesome. And you're in a great environment to be able to get out and outdoors in Idaho. We love it here, and so excited about that. When we think about risk management in a manufacturing setting, it creates some interesting risks. Sometimes there's also a balance that we have to reach between safety and profitability. Because people don't want to talk about profitability, but the reality is if the company's not profitable, nobody has jobs, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this balance there. Tell us a little bit about how that works as you're a safety manager and working with those types of decisions.
I think safety and profitability are married at the hip. The more profitable your company is, the more money you have to spend on your safety program. Obviously, as a safety manager, I've got a little bit of bias there. I find that you often in times in life get what you pay for.
Yeah.
But additionally, your safety is. A lot of companies will tell you, safety's our number one. Safety's our number one, and then it'll be the 10th or 12th item on their budget list. Mm-hmm. I'm very lucky to work in a place right now at Trinity. That is not the case. We have a very, very distinct focus on the safety, and that didn't start with me. That starts at the top. That starts up at your president, your chief operating officer. Mm-hmm. Safety culture really starts at the top and spreads downwards through your organization. Mm-hmm. There's obviously it's going to flow up to you've got to have the buy-in, you've got to have the engagement.
Yeah.
Really the groundwork, that fertile ground to plant that seed, it starts at the top. It has to be a full commitment. We talk about commitment and safety. Oftentimes we've all worked at the place where the whole company's really committed to safety. And what does that mean? It means some fancy posters. It might mean a T-shirt. Maybe we get together and do a safety committee. Mm-hmm. That's not commitment. That's a Band-Aid. That's some sparkles on top of the cake.
Yeah.
Real full commitment. We're talking process. We're talking equipment. We're talking environment. We're talking accountability, and those are the things that really have to drive your culture to get the risk out of the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great map for us on what matters in safety and how it really drives. Because you're right, it's so easy to kind of have the all the right processes and words and techniques and posters.
Absolutely.
But if it's not hitting the ground force and making an impact and people are excited about it, it's not going to get implemented. Well, and I think that's one of the things that most clients wrestle with is they just have a hard time with implementation.
And implementation is so much easier when there's a genuine concern for your folks. Mm-hmm. So often we find workplaces where safety is a function and it's out there, it's a thing, mm-hmm. but it's not an integral part of what you do every day. One of the things that we do at Trinity, our chief operating officer has us. She references a lot of books, and one that we've read. It's a hospitality book, right? It's dealing with the restaurant industry. It talks about detail and detail orientation, and how oriented to detail you have to be, and how genuine your concern has to be.
Okay.
So when we start breaking down tasks, we start talking about processes, things like that. It really starts with small details. Well, the smallest detail that I can get down to is, do I honestly care? Do I honestly care about this process? Do I honestly care about this person? And if you can't answer yes to that, you're building a hollow shell of a safety program where people are going to see that. You know, us as people, psychologically, we're very good at determining when somebody's being genuine or when somebody's just telling us what we want to hear. And if we're being honest with ourselves, and we're working in a place where safety is an extra thing, a secondary duty, or even sometimes a tertiary duty. That's not a safety program that's going to reduce your risk. That's a safety program that we have to do the thing. Let's check that box and move on. And that just doesn't work.
Yeah, that care is really important. I appreciate you bringing that up because I think I've learned as I've grown in my career too that as you're interacting with people, if they know you care, then you can relate as humans instead of just telling them what you think they should do. Well, and when you tell people things, a lot of times they don't even hear it because they're thinking about justifying themselves or defending themselves for something that you're telling them they're doing wrong.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I think that's a really fascinating area that you've hit on. And I think with safety, risk management, you know, one of the things that we try to build is being good question askers. You know, let's ask questions to where other people come up with the answers and they own it, right? So share a little bit how that might work with your team as you're working on safety at Trinity.
As we're talking about trying to own the process. And so really what's worked for me at Trinity, I'm lucky to work with some fantastic people. Nobody cares more about a solution than the one that they come up with, right? Now, as a safety manager, I can go into my production floor and I can spout off all kinds of highfalutin, big word solutions to problems, and I'm going to get a bunch of blank looks. And I'm going to get some nodded heads.
Yeah.
As soon as I walk back out the door, they're going to go back to what they were doing. And that's human nature, right? Nobody wants to hear somebody come talk down to them or tell them how to do their job. For example, I work in a manufacturing environment. I'm not a welder. I'm not a fabricator. Could I figure it out? Yeah, probably eventually. But why would I have any credibility if I came into your workplace as a welder and told you how to weld? But what I can do is I can tell you where we need to get to. Here's the end state goal. Here's our left limit. Here's our right limit. Stay between these lines. You tell me how you want to get there.
Yeah.
As long as we get there, that's what matters, right? It doesn't matter that it's my way. It doesn't matter that it's your way. It matters that we got there together. And you're going to get that buy-in. You're going to get that ownership when I let you choose the solution to your problem. As long as we meet a couple of my parameters, it's going to stick. It's not going to be a solution where here comes the safety guy. I better put my glasses on.
Now, when they're telling their buddies, it's not, oh, Ben told us we had to do this. It's, no, hey, this is something I'm really excited about this. You guys got to get behind this and support me, right?
one of the most fulfilling things that I had happen to me recently is that I worked with some folks to develop a solution to a situation we had.
Yeah.
It was a lower end risk, but what I heard from those guys talking to each other was, hey, that's the guy who got us the tools to help fix the problem that we found a solution for. It wasn't that I fixed the solution. It wasn't that I did anything.
Yeah.
I gave them the tools necessary, and now they own it, and it's going to stick. It's not going to be a passing thing.
That is so great. I love that, Ben. That's because you're basically motivating other people to think as a safety liaison in the organization instead of just you being the only guy. I love
what's safer than 200 guys concerned about their safety more than I am.
Yeah.
As a safety manager.
That's so great. Yeah, that's interesting. I just love that kind of approach, and it's a qualitative approach. It's not something AI is going to replace.
No,
you can't AI relationships. So how it's really interesting. And I thought maybe we just see I have this baseball lamp and baseball icon here. We got baseball season coming up. The thought comes to mind. What does it look like to hit a home run in safety? Safety is challenging because sometimes it's the prevention of the things that didn't happen that you have a hard time pointing to. But can you give us a story or something that's happened where you felt like, man, we did a really good job on this one?
So I'll give you two. So when we talk about a home run, when we're in manufacturing, there's risks. You cannot engineer every risk out.
Yeah.
You can't bubble wrap every employee, nor should you, right? We're adults. We take ownership for our responsibilities, and we learn about the risks that we face, and we try to engineer them out as much as we can. And that's important. But when we talk about a solution that works and hitting a home run, really it's getting. We've had a recent run of guys letting us know before they got hurt, hey, my back's a little stiff today. hey, I helped do this thing, and my back's a little stiff. That's awesome. I love getting those reports before the injury occurs, right?
Yeah.
Because what I can do is, hey, you work in our finish shop, and your job is to install brakes, for example, and there's some ergonomically compromised positions at times. So you know what we're going to do? We're not going to have you do brakes today. I've got 1,000 other things that need done. I've got 1,000 other things that don't involve moving in an ergonomically compromised position, even for a few minutes. Let's have you do something else. Or you're not going to miss work. Your paycheck's unaffected. The work is still getting done. You're still a valuable member of our team, but we're avoiding a potentially debilitating injury to your back.
Yeah.
Because we're going to take 2 or 3 days. We're going to take care of you. We're going to do it the right way. Because we built enough credibility with the program, we built enough trust, we built enough relationship. Guys know that I'm not going to give you a hard time because you came and told me your back hurts. I'm not going to tease you. I'm going to take care of you. That's what we do. So the home run isn't. It's not necessarily. Oh, we prevented the methyl ethyl death cloud spill.
Yeah.
It's the little things. It's the day to day. I trust you enough. I'm going to put my well-being in your hands and trust you to take care of me. Those are the home runs that we hit.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's so right on, because as I was working as a broker, I would do the data and analytics on the losses, and you would see patterns like for every 5 small claims there'd be a large one.
Yeah.
And I would explain to my clients, that at birth underwriters have this chiseled in their forehead: frequency predicts severity, right?
Absolutely.
And so if you're on the front end of that frequency, and you're reducing that frequency, it's naturally just going to reduce your severity claims as well.
And we have a willingness at Trinity to, our injury rate and our injury log, we're recording those early reports as injuries. We're recording that. Hey, the guy's got a stiff back, whether it had anything to do with us or not, right?
Yeah.
I've got guys that go out and ride dirt bikes on the weekend. They come in, and you can tell. Guys are moving a little bit slower, stiffer. We've also got some guys who, they're not in their 20s or 30s anymore, and it's a physical job.
Yeah.
And as much as we take the physicality out of it, there's still a degree of it. So we'll get guys that, hey, I pushed just wrong, or I turned my head when I sneezed, my back is stiff. It's taking care of those guys that.
Yeah.
So our frequency, we saw a little bit of a jump in the last 2 years, but it's not that we're seeing a severity increase. We've actually seen a significant decrease. But we're seeing guys reporting the minor dents and dings before they turn into the full body crash.
And that's that near miss, non-injury accident kind of reporting.
It is.
That really is a precursor to lowering your losses, because if you're dealing with them before they happen, now you can prevent them. Yeah, I love it.
Yep.
That's so great, man. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And
of course,
I'm just kind of thinking here, you deal with HR and safety a lot, and compliance. How does that all work together? As a safety manager, working with the human resources department, working with compliance, what's kind of those intersections, some of those, collaboration or teamwork kind of opportunities there?
So I'll answer in 2 ways. Firstly, compliance should not be the goal of your safety program. And that's probably a little bit different take than most folks are used to hearing. So if you go back and you talk about motivation, why did OSHA form? Well, some business owners were dirtbags. They didn't take care of their people. OSHA really exists to keep business owners and business operators from hurting their employees, right? That's kind of a simplistic breakdown. We found that there are some compliance tasks you just got to do the thing, right?
Yeah.
You just got to check the box. But if you approach your operation with an ethical, moral baseline, you treat your people not as commodities, you treat them as people, you treat them as the most valuable asset that your business has. Compliance seems to be something that sort of just happens.
That takes care of itself a little bit.
It does. It becomes a product of the process, right? And that's not to say that you shouldn't have a compliance mindset. That's not to say that. But I found working at Trinity, having the people first concept, take care of your people, compliance is way easier. It occurs much easier, much more frequently. We have so many fewer instances where we have to worry about compliance. So if I take care of you, if when you come to me and you say, man, my back's kind of stiff, and you know that I'm going to take care of it, I'm going to find you some light duty per se.
Yeah.
The chances of you reporting a hazard and trusting that I'm going to take care of it when it could actually cause a significant injury, it should just go through the roof. They'd absolutely go through the roof. And the second half of what you've asked about working with HR, probably unconventional as well. I see HR as the biggest force multiplier for the safety program in the company.
Huh.
And it goes back to, put in a little bit of a framework from a psychology standpoint. You're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah.
So we start at the bottom. We've got those physiological needs, that safety need, and way up there at the top, we've got that self-actualization. When we start talking about looking at more than myself, being the most I can be, taking care of others. Well, HR is what's providing those two layers, those first two. We bring employees in, we treat them with respect, we provide them a paycheck that's extremely competitive, we give them modern tools that work well, we provide a maintenance department that is Johnny on the spot to fix issues. Now I get people who have met those bottom layers. They're working in that fourth and fifth tier of Maslow's hierarchy. That's where you get your buy-in. That's where you get your engagement. That's where you get your guys who are thinking ahead. That's where you get your guys that are going to be willing to say, hey, we've done it this way for 25 years. I wonder if there's a better way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that when you have an HR department that's bringing in guys that aren't well suited, culture fit. They're not making a good paycheck. How can I ask one of my fabricators to worry about safety when he's worried about putting shoes on his kids' feet?
Yeah.
Those two things won't work. So if I have an HR department that has a very solid policy for attracting quality folks, they retain those folks, they treat those folks well. We've got a gentleman, we're doing a retirement party tomorrow. He's retiring after 46 years with our company. You don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. We've got a number of folks that are 20, 25, 30 years with the company because they're treated well, they're taken care of, and they're operating at the upper end of that framework. That's why we've seen an 80% reduction in our recordable rate in 2 years.
That's awesome.
We've seen our DART rate dip from really not very good. We're beating the average last year.
So good, man.
So
That's really important.
Picture.
Yeah, and you got to coordinate, right? I mean, you can't have siloed departments in an organization, and then
not at all.
And then they don't communicate because it just sometimes you're being counterintuitive on the messaging you're sending out or the
Yes.
incentives, right?
Absolutely.
We look at what's incentivizing the poor behaviors and how do we turn that and create the right motivators for people in an organization. And it's fascinating to think about getting to that root cause, figuring out what's driving people instead of hammering them for doing something, right? It's such a different approach.
It really starts with where you start from. If you're coming from a place of, man, my employees, they're just not very good, they're doing all kinds of silly stuff, you're going to find what you're looking for. But if you invest in your employees, you pour into them the time, the money, the attention, what do they need, set them up for success. I reach back to my firefighting career. I had a very intelligent fire chief tell me one time, fire chiefs don't fight fire. I said, what are you talking about, chief? He said, fire chiefs don't fight fire. Fire chiefs make firefighters better. They train them. They get the trucks, they get the hoses, they get the turnout gear, they get them the valuable training, not the check the box junk. So a fire chief's job, or a safety manager, or an executive, your job is to provide the environment, the tools, and the motivation for your people to go be successful. Take care of your people, they'll take care of the job. You won't ever have to worry about it.
Yeah, it's so great. And I love that. I wanted to kind of pivot just a minute because I know you like to lift weights. I have lifted in the past, not quite as in good a shape as you right now, but
appreciate that.
There's a process when you lift weights for gains. It's incremental gains. It's nothing fast, but it's reps and it's consistency and it's persistence, right? And I think it's a fascinating thing to kind of watch those gains happen. And when you think about safety and risk management, it's similar in some ways. What are some of the things that you found that, even in thinking about how the body works, like, you were talking about earlier, this guy's doing some repetitive motions in a really awkward position. How do we strengthen up those other muscles that are the opposite types of movements so that he doesn't have these repetitive movement issues? And I just think it's fascinating, the lifting connection to safety.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that if you're successful in weightlifting, you've done it for more than a few minutes, it's consistency. It's discipline. And discipline is, to me, it's freedom. I know what I'm going to be doing. I've got a coach. He's got a plan. Follow the plan. Stick to the plan. Stick to the vision. I'm not a huge fan of motivation. Motivation comes and goes, but who you decide you're going to be is discipline. If you decide that you're going to be the guy who lifts weights 5 days a week, you'll find a way. You'll find the time. It'll become a priority for you. So the same thing applies in a safety environment or in a leadership role or in the company. You need a clear vision. And I'm lucky to work for somebody who has a very clear vision of where we're going and what we're doing. That vision is very well articulated. Mm-hmm. Here's your expectations. Here's where we're going. Here's your tools. Here's your budget. Here's your help. Mm-hmm. I think having the discipline to show up every day, choose to be somebody who contributes, right?
Yeah.
You never want to be somebody who takes more than you give. You always want to grow the business. You want to grow the environment. You want to grow the culture. Have that in your head. Decide on that, and then go do it. And it sounds simplistic, but it is really that simple. You are what you choose to be.
Yeah.
If you choose to be the guy who shows up grumbling and moaning about, man, I don't want to be here at 5 a.m. This really sucks. Mm-hmm. Man, it's cold outside. Hey, you're right. I don't want to be there at 5 a.m. It was 26 degrees this morning. Mm-hmm. That's not my preferred environment. But I chose, get up, get ready for work, go to work, be productive, be successful, help people. You just got to choose.
Yeah, there's that kind of combination of I'm listening and summarizing here a little bit, care and discipline, right?
Yes.
So discipline is the persistence, the commitment, and that kind of thing. And what can fuel that is care, right? Where we show people we care, we show them they're valuable, and we help set goals for them that they can achieve. Then the discipline can crank up and really take over, and you really get some awesome gains. And I see that in weightlifting too, right? Yeah. It's a great example, even in the military, your background there, working through challenges. Well, I want to kind of just end up, you're going to be working with us on some threat simulators. Mm-hmm. Tell us what's exciting for you about a threat simulator online. Why is that interesting?
It's exciting. It's an adventure. Working with you as we work through some of the beta process on the first one, it's exciting. It's fun. It's a challenge. It's not something we do every day. And I think that's one of the things with emergency planning and emergency reaction. It's particularly in this setting where we're in a classroom, we're in an online situation. You have an opportunity to go do things with no consequences. Mm-hmm. How often do we get that in life?
Yeah.
How often do we get to go to work and have no consequences for whatever decision we make? Mm-hmm. How often do we get a chance to make a decision and see what happens, and then get the chance to go redo it?
Yeah.
And that's not a thing in my line of business. I can't imagine it is in risk management either. You make educated decisions, and you, for lack of a better term, you hope for the best.
That's right.
So these threat simulators are going to give us a chance to, what if? Yeah. What if the worst day happens? Am I prepared? Am I ready? And honestly, I would rather find out that I'm not.
Yeah.
I'd rather find out where my gaps are.
Well, maybe first time you go through, you find out you're not, and then the second time you make adjustments, and the third time you're maybe you're accelerating your readiness.
I think as we start building these out, and as we start, we're going to have some generic ones. We're going to have, I had a fire in the factory last night. What do I do?
Yeah.
Okay, that's something that can affect anybody. But as we get more specific on different industries and different businesses, and the specific threats to those businesses, having worked in a food manufacturing plant prior, what's your worst case scenario? What's the absolute worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
Let's work through it. And let's have every bad thing that can happen. Let's let Murphy's Law run wild on us for a day. I think there's so much growth that can come from that conflict. There's so much growth that can come from, I didn't know that was even a possibility.
You're almost training people to not just take orders, or not just this is what I do when this happens, but you're training them to think independently and creatively about how to solve risk problems.
100%.
And that's huge. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, and we should seek out that conflict that comes from those situations, right? You get a high performing team, you stick them in a crisis, you'll see where the cracks in the relationships are. Mm-hmm. You can stress test those relationships. And if you're a safety manager and you're going to find out that you and that finance manager, you really don't see eye to eye. You really don't see what the priorities are. Mm-hmm. Seek that conflict out. Get that growth. I mean, that's the place to do it, right?
I love it.
In a threat simulator, you have the opportunity to really figure out what's the priority. What is it?
That's so great, Ben. I'm so excited that you're helping us out on the side. I think it'll be a benefit for Trinity as well in the long run. I hope it will.
I think
so. It's just fun to help people move down the road. You've learned so much in your career, mm-hmm. and to be able to bless others
Absolutely.
it's a fun thing. So thank
It
you
is.
for all that you do, and we're just really excited to see where things go with these threat simulators. But this whole conversation about how do you care for your employees, how do you build discipline, how do you build excitement about things that typically people aren't excited about, right? Like
Yeah.
safety. That's really cool.
Well, it's interesting too. You bring that up. Recent conversation we had. I had somebody tell me that my job should be the easiest one in the company. So what are you talking about? I said, you convince guys who don't want to get hurt to not get hurt. I hadn't looked at it that way, but that's right. That's correct.
Yeah.
I should have the easiest job. It should be real easy.
Mm-hmm.
The trick there is just showing people how not to get hurt.
That's right.
Avoid the risk. The less risk, the less exposure, the less chance somebody gets hurt. So
That's so
it's
good.
really just a chance to educate folks and
Yeah.
do it in a way that sticks.
Well, Ben, we want to thank you for being a part of the Strategic Risk Mind podcast today. It's been a real blessing.
Thank you.
I know a lot of our viewers are going to enjoy listening to just your pro tips and insights on how you've built out a great safety program at Trinity. So thank you for joining us.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too.